So Atlas Shrugged is still a very popular book in the United States, and a lot of Republican politicians and CEOs and tech pros and stuff pay lip service to enjoying it and respecting Ayn Rand and her ideas. Yet we still don't see any of this state in any political organ of some sort. So what is how did this gap occur, do you think?
I mean, Atlas Shrugged's a book. And I think a lot of people do indeed enjoy it without fully understanding it. Yeah, I wonder if Trump's ever read a book longer than 100 pages. I'm skeptical, right? It's 700 pages. I mean, when does Trump read it? Maybe he listens to it, when he plays golf. I don't know. Yes, Trump says he likes the Fountainhead, but I'm skeptical. Yeah, I mean, Supreme Court has at least one Supreme Court judge who's a huge fan of the Fountainhead, actually forces all his clerks to watch the Fountainhead movie once a year. Most of Silicon Valley are fans of Atlas Shrugged and have been for decades. It's not a new phenomenon, it's actually an old phenomenon. It's a book, and it depends on what people do with it. And again, I think a lot of people who read the book like the book, and a lot of people are inspired by the book, really inspired. But that doesn't mean they get the philosophy, right? So I believe a lot of the politicians who read Atlas Shrugged and excited them about freedom and maybe even at some level morality and pursuit of happiness. Maybe it really got them, but it never really went deep. They never really conceptually understood the philosophy. So then when they got into power, I mean, I can think of people like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and some others, the Tea Party conservatives, who came into power, quoting Ayn Rand. You remember Ted Cruz reading from Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged on the floor of the Senate. Right? And yet they wouldn't give up their religion, so they held on to that. And once they got into politics and they suddenly found that power required them to make compromises, or power required them to do the opposite of what they thought the book said, and suddenly they realized they didn't really have a strong grasp of what individual rights mean and what then suddenly it all falls apart. And what they really want is power, it turns out. And they thought they were advocates of freedom. They thought they loved Ayn Rand, and I don't think they were lying when they said that. But now, maybe I was wrong to really go after Rand, because, I can't achieve anything doing that. I can't achieve what I really want, which is power. So they're gone. It takes real work to understand Atlas Shrugged. It takes real effort. It takes real cognition. And most people who read it don't do the work. They just don't. So take Silicon Valley, for example. A lot of the founders of Silicon Valley, particularly the first generation of Silicon Valley, read Atlas Shrugged, and I think it inspired them to create Silicon Valley. So I think we're way better off because of Atlas Shrugged, right? We're way better off because they read the books, right? So whether it's Steve Jobs supposedly read Atlas Shrugged early on, and Larry Ellison, I know, read Atlas Shrugged, and Michael Dell read the Fountainhead Atlas Shrugged in his dorm room as he's putting together the first Dell computers in the early 1980s. They all did. And it gave them the kind of spiritual fuel that art can to go and conquer the world, which they did. But again, it never became a philosophy. It never became integrated in their lives. It never became, the philosophy by which they lived. It remained an inspiration. It remained at the level, in that sense, it remained at the level of art rather than at the level of philosophy. And that's great, right? Because our world is better for whatever people are being inspired by Ayn Rand, but it's not as good as it could have been if they had really delved into the philosophy and made it a part of their conscious existence and applied that philosophy consistently. But it's hard. I meet a lot of people who are really devoted to Ayn Rand, but they're also businessmen, and they spend all their time, doing the work of business, and they love Rand and they love Atlas Shrugged, but they don't completely get it because they haven't put in the time and effort, because they don't have the time and effort, because it's all dedicated to work. And they've got a culture pushing against it constantly. They're brave enough just to stand where they are pushing back, and so it's tragic in that sense because they're not getting the full benefits of Rand because they haven't put in the work because they're too busy changing the world, right? In their business lives. So it's going to take time, and and one of the reasons you need intellectuals, and this is the key, and one intellectual is not enough, one philosopher is not enough, is because you need intellectuals to constantly apply these ideas, constantly remind people that they exist, constantly show them how they're connected to their lives, constantly, right? In every aspect of their lives. And that's why we need hundreds of objectivist intellectuals to be able to constantly remind these people who've read Atlas Shrugged, this is what it means, this is how it applies, this is what's going on. And hey, be proud of what you're doing, continue to pursue happiness. So all of that needs to be done. You need an infrastructure. You can't just take a philosophy and it'll just do its thing. People pick it up and actually teach it. That happened with every philosophy. Jesus needs the apostles, and the apostles need the fathers of the church and all those people who teach Christianity. And Kant needs the entire university system to adopt his ideas and spread those ideas. It doesn't happen by itself. It's not through osmosis. It's actually through intellectuals doing the work, and we need those intellectuals.